Captain Zextai had seen warfare across 17 star systems. His chitinous exoskeleton bore scars from plasma burns, kinetic rounds, and energy blades. As a veteran of the Korthak Mercenary Guild, he commanded respect among the galaxy's most feared fighters. Yet today, standing in the briefing chamber of the mercenary flagship Void Reaper, his mandibles clicked nervously against each other. The holographic display showed a blue-green planet rotating slowly in the center of the room. Earth. The third rock from an unremarkable yellow star in what the locals called the Sol system. To most civilized species, it looked peaceful enough. Zextai knew better. "The contract is simple," announced Guild Commander Vorth, his 6 eyes scanning the assembled mercenaries. "The hegemony wants this planet's resistance crushed. The humans have been interfering with mining operations on their asteroid belt for months. Standard pacification protocol." Murmurs rippled through the crowd of alien warriors. Pacification meant orbital bombardment, followed by ground occupation. It should have been routine. Should have been. "Payment is triple standard rates," Vorth continued, and the murmurs stopped. Triple rates meant extreme hazard pay. "Intel suggests these humans have some unconventional military capabilities." Zextai's secondary arms twitched. He had heard whispers in the cantinas of frontier worlds, stories that made hardened mercenaries go quiet and change the subject. Tales of a species that had somehow survived on a planet that should have killed them 1,000,000 times over. "Sir," called out mercenary Draklos, his translator crackling as it converted his guttural language. "What kind of unconventional capabilities are we talking about?" Commander Vorth's expression darkened. "Their homeworld registers as a Class 12 Deathworld on the Galactic Habitability Index." The briefing room fell silent. Class 12 was theoretical. No known species had ever evolved on anything above Class 8, and even those were considered miraculous survivors. Class 12 meant a planet actively trying to kill everything on it every single day. "That's impossible," whispered someone from the back. "The data has been verified 3 times, Vorth replied coldly. "Gravity is 0.98 standard, which seems reasonable until you factor in the atmospheric density and pressure. Their weather systems regularly produce winds that would shred our armor. They have storms that generate more electrical energy than our ship's main reactor. The planet's magnetic field fluctuates so wildly that navigation computers crash trying to compensate." Zextai felt his respiratory spiracles constrict. He had fought on volcanic worlds and frozen wastelands, but nothing approaching those conditions. "Furthermore," Vorth continued, "geological surveys indicate the planet's crust is extremely unstable. Tectonic activity that would evacuate a civilized world is considered normal for them. The oceans are filled with predators that make our bioweapons look like domestic pets. And that's just the environment." The display zoomed in on the planet's surface, showing massive urban centers connected by transportation networks. Despite the hostile conditions, human civilization thrived. The humans themselves present additional complications. Medical scans indicate they heal from injuries that would be fatal to most species. Their immune systems actively hunt down foreign pathogens and destroy them. They can function in temperature ranges that span nearly 60 degrees Celsius. They require minimal sleep and can maintain combat effectiveness for extended periods under stress that would break other species mentally. A young mercenary named Clicktar raised a tentacle. "Surely they must have some weaknesses, peaceful inclinations perhaps?" Vorth's laugh was harsh. "Their history files make for interesting reading. In the past 500 years alone, they have fought over 200 major wars among themselves. They weaponized splitting atoms before they achieved faster-than-light travel. They have documented cases of individuals fighting effectively with severed limbs, punctured organs, and blood loss that should have rendered them unconscious." The holographic display shifted to show intercepted military footage. Human soldiers moved through environments that would require environmental suits for most species, wearing minimal protection. They carried weapons that seemed almost primitive compared to standard galactic armaments, yet the footage showed them devastating alien equipment with ruthless efficiency. This footage was taken during their first contact war with the Zalani Collective, Vorth explained. The Zalani sent a standard invasion force of 50,000 troops to establish a beachhead. The humans responded with what they called a police action. The footage showed human soldiers moving through a Zalani forward base like ghosts. They used the terrain itself as a weapon, turning the alien invaders' technology against them. What struck Zextai most was their silence. No battle cries, no communication chatter. They moved with the focused intensity of natural predators. The Zalani surrendered after losing 80% of their force in 6 standard hours, Vorth continued. The humans suffered fewer than a dozen casualties. Mercenary Theknos, a veteran of the Plasma Wars, shifted uneasily. What about their technology? Surely their equipment can't match modern galactic standard. That's where it gets interesting, Vorth replied. They appear to deliberately use what they call primitive technology. Chemical propellant weapons instead of plasma rifles, kinetic vehicles instead of hover platforms, blade weapons alongside energy weapons. Our analysts believe this is a tactical choice rather than technological limitation. The display showed human weapons in detail. Projectile rifles that fired metal slugs at hypersonic velocities, explosive devices that used chemical reactions instead of antimatter, vehicles that operated on simple mechanical principles rather than complex gravitic systems. Their reasoning appears to be reliability over sophistication. A chemical projectile weapon will function in electromagnetic interference that would shut down our plasma systems. Their vehicles can operate in conditions that would disable our hover tech. They prioritize equipment that works consistently over equipment that works optimally. Zextai found himself grudgingly impressed. Most species focused on advancement and efficiency. The humans seemed to understand that the most advanced weapon was useless if it failed at a critical moment. What about their command structure? Asked another mercenary. Non-standard, Vorth admitted. They utilize what they call special forces units that operate with extreme autonomy. These units are selected from their regular military and trained beyond normal parameters. Intelligence suggests these special forces are specifically designed to counter technologically superior opponents. The holographic display shifted again, showing training footage that had been intercepted from human military communications. Soldiers moved through obstacle courses that would challenge most species' physical limitations. They demonstrated proficiency with dozens of different weapon systems. Most unnervingly, they trained extensively in what appeared to be torture resistance and psychological warfare. They prepare for scenarios where they are outnumbered, outgunned, and operating in hostile territory with no support, Vorth explained. Their training doctrine assumes they will face superior technology and focuses on negating those advantages through unconventional tactics. The room had grown uncomfortably quiet. These were seasoned warriors who had conquered worlds, but the footage of human special forces training was unlike anything they had seen. The humans moved with mechanical precision, yet maintained creativity and problem-solving. They displayed physical capabilities that bordered on impossible while demonstrating technological adaptability that suggested high intelligence. The contract remains open, Vorth announced. Standard rules apply. Those who want out can leave now with no penalty. Nearly a third of the assembled mercenaries filed out of the briefing room. Zextai considered joining them but remained seated. The payment was too good to pass up, and his pride wouldn't let him back down from a challenge. For those remaining, we deploy in 72 standard hours, Vorth continued. Intel suggests the humans have approximately 40 Special Forces operatives stationed throughout their solar system. Our force consists of 800 of the galaxy's finest mercenaries. The odds are clearly in our favor. Zextai wished he felt as confident as his commander sounded. Something about the human footage bothered him. The way they moved suggested they weren't just soldiers, they were survivors. And on a Class 12 death world, only the most dangerous creatures survived. As the briefing concluded and the mercenaries began filing out, Zextai lingered to study the holographic Earth still rotating in the center of the room. Somewhere on that hostile blue world, human special forces were probably training for scenarios exactly like this one. They were preparing to face superior numbers and technology using nothing but their skills, their equipment, and their understanding of warfare. For the first time in his career, Captain Zextai wondered if triple hazard pay was enough. The first sign that something was wrong came when the orbital sensors started malfunctioning. Captain Zextai studied the displays in the Void Reaper's command center as static flickered across multiple screens. They had dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system 12 hours ago, and the electronic interference had been building steadily ever since. "Engineering reports no damage to our systems," announced Communications Officer Kethmar, her voice tight with confusion. "The interference appears to be artificial in origin." Commander Vorth leaned over the tactical display, his 6 eyes focused on the scattered readings they were managing to collect. "Show me what we can see." The main screen cleared partially, revealing the Sol system in basic outline. The star burned yellow-white in the center, with 9 planets orbiting at various distances. Asteroid belts filled the spaces between worlds, creating a complex 3-dimensional maze of rock and metal. "Human ships detected at multiple locations," reported sensor operator Nixaval. "They appear to be using the asteroid fields as cover. Ships are smaller than expected, approximately frigate class." Zextai studied the tactical display with growing unease. The human vessels weren't arranged in any standard defensive formation. Instead, they were scattered throughout the system in what looked like random positions. It made no tactical sense unless... "They're not trying to protect fixed positions," he realized aloud. "They're setting up for guerrilla warfare in space." Commander Vorth's mandibles clicked dismissively. "Impossible. You can't conduct guerrilla operations in vacuum. There's nowhere to hide, no terrain to use for advantage." Even as he spoke, the sensor display updated to show more human ships appearing from behind asteroids and planetary moons. The humans were indeed using the natural features of their star system as concealment, popping into view just long enough to be detected before vanishing again. "Sir," called out Tactical Officer Rondos, "we're receiving a transmission from the human vessels." "Put it through." The main screen shifted to show a human face. The creature looked remarkably similar to the base humanoid template that had evolved on several worlds, but there were subtle differences. The bone structure seemed heavier, the musculature more pronounced. The eyes held an intelligence that was both analytical and predatory. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force," the human said, her voice coming through the translators with crisp efficiency. "You are trespassing in Sol system space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Commander Vorth stepped forward. "I am Guild Commander Vorth of the Korthak Mercenary Fleet. We are here under legal contract to suppress illegal resistance activities. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick." The human's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes that made Zexatai's respiratory spiracles constrict involuntarily. "You should have done your research better," Admiral Chen replied. "This is Sol system space. We are the Terrans, and you just threatened our home." The transmission ended. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. The mercenary fleet hung in space. 800 warriors aboard 12 ships, waiting for the humans to make their move. The sensor displays showed the scattered human vessels maintaining their positions. Then the trap sprung. The first indication was the asteroid that wasn't an asteroid. What they had classified as a large rock suddenly lit up with drive signatures and weapon locks. It had been a disguised human ship sitting silent and cold among the real asteroids for hours. "Contact! Unknown vessel off the port bow!" Tactical Officer Rondos shouted. Before Commander Vorth could respond, the disguised ship opened fire. But instead of energy weapons or missiles, it launched what appeared to be simple metal projectiles. Zextai almost laughed at the primitive attack until the first projectile struck their escort frigate. The kinetic impact was devastating. The metal slug, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, punched through the frigate's shields and armor like they weren't there. Secondary explosions rippled along the smaller ship's hull as critical systems failed. "Impossible!" Commander Vorth snarled. "Kinetic weapons can't penetrate modern shielding." "The projectiles are traveling at 0.27 light speed," Sensor Operator Nixaval reported, his voice filled with disbelief. "At that velocity, kinetic energy exceeds most shield parameters." More disguised ships revealed themselves throughout the asteroid field. The humans had turned the natural features of their star system into a massive weapons platform. Ships that had appeared to be debris or small asteroids suddenly blazed with engine signatures and weapon discharges. All ships. "Evasive maneuvers," Vorth ordered. "Return fire." The mercenary fleet began to move, their sophisticated gravitic drives allowing for rapid acceleration and direction changes. Plasma cannons and missile pods opened up, sending destructive energy toward the human positions. The humans responded by doing something that defied all conventional space combat doctrine. They moved deeper into the asteroid field. "Sir, they're using the asteroids as cover," Tactical Officer Rondos reported. "Our targeting systems can't get clean locks." Zextai watched in fascination as human ships wove between asteroids with impossible precision. They were flying through a three-dimensional maze of rock and metal at speeds that should have been suicidal, yet somehow avoiding collision while maintaining offensive capability. "How are they navigating in there?" he asked. "Unknown," Nixaval replied. "The electromagnetic interference is too heavy for sensors to penetrate effectively. They must be using some kind of passive navigation." A new alarm sounded as one of the human ships emerged from the asteroid field directly beneath the mercenary flagship. At point-blank range, it fired a spread of those devastating kinetic projectiles before disappearing back into the maze of asteroids. The Void Reaper shuddered as the impacts overloaded the shield generators. Emergency lighting bathed the bridge in red as damage control teams scrambled to restore critical systems. "Damage report," Commander Vorth demanded. "Shield generators offline, armor compromised on deck 7 through 12, came the reply from engineering. "We're venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches." For the first time since the engagement began, Zextai saw uncertainty in his commander's eyes. The humans weren't fighting like any species they had encountered before. They were using the environment itself as a weapon, turning the familiarity with their home system into a tactical advantage. "All ships, withdraw to minimum safe distance," Vorth ordered. "We'll bombard their positions from range." But as the mercenary fleet began to pull back, the human ships followed them out of the asteroid field. What had seemed like a retreat was actually a repositioning maneuver. The humans had drawn the mercenaries into the asteroids, inflicted maximum damage, and were now shifting to the next phase of their battle plan. "Sir, multiple human vessels are moving to intercept our withdrawal," Tactical Officer Rondos reported. "How many ships do they have?" Vorth demanded. "Difficult to determine," Nixaval replied. "The electromagnetic interference is still growing stronger. They may have been hiding more vessels than we initially detected." The human ships that had followed them from the asteroids moved with a coordination that spoke of extensive training and preparation. They weren't simply chasing the mercenaries, they were herding them into specific positions. "They're trying to push us toward the gas giant," Zextai realized. "Jupiter. They want us in that gravity well. Commander Vorth's expression darkened as he understood the implications. Fighting near a massive planetary body would limit maneuverability and create additional navigation hazards. The humans were systematically removing every tactical advantage the mercenary fleet possessed. "New contacts," sensor operator Nixaval called out. "Ships emerging from behind Jupiter's moons. Estimate 12 additional human vessels." The main tactical display updated to show the new contacts. The humans had positioned forces throughout their star system using planets, moons, and asteroids as staging areas. What had initially appeared to be a small defensive fleet was revealing itself to be a much larger force operating with careful coordination. "How many ships do these Deathworlders have?" someone muttered. The answer came in the form of more contacts appearing on sensors. Human ships emerged from hiding positions near Mars, from the outer system asteroid belts, even from within the gas giant's ring system. Each group moved with purpose, closing off escape routes and forcing the mercenary fleet into an increasingly restricted area of space. "Sir," Communications Officer Kethmar said quietly, "we are receiving another transmission from the humans." Admiral Chen's face appeared on the screen again. Behind her, Zexatai could see other humans working at control stations with the same calm efficiency she displayed. "Commander Vorth," she said, "you have lost 4 ships and taken significant damage to your remaining vessels. My forces have barely begun to engage you. This is your final opportunity to withdraw from Sol system space." "We outnumber you," Vorth snarled. Admiral Chen's expression didn't change, but her next words carried a weight that made every mercenary on the bridge go silent. "You outnumbered the Zalani too." The transmission ended, leaving the mercenary fleet alone in space with the growing realization that they had walked into something far more dangerous than a simple pacification operation. The humans weren't just defending their territory, they were demonstrating why their species had survived on a Class 12 death world. They didn't just fight, they hunted. The boarding alarms shrieked through the corridors of the Void Reaper as Captain Zextai grabbed his plasma rifle and headed for the armory. The impossible had happened. Somehow, human soldiers had breached their flagship while it was still in combat. "All hands, repel boarders!" Commander Vorth's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. "Security teams to sections C and G immediately." Zextai joined the stream of mercenaries rushing toward the breach points, but his veteran instincts were telling him something was wrong. How had human ships gotten close enough to launch boarding pods without being detected? The tactical situation made no sense. The answer came as he rounded a corner and nearly collided with mercenary Draklos, who was backing away from something with his weapon raised. "They're not using boarding pods," Draklos gasped. "They came through the hull breach on the lower decks. They're inside the ship." For a moment, Zextai didn't understand. Then the implications hit him like a physical blow. The humans hadn't launched boarding craft. They had used the hull damage from earlier kinetic strikes as entry points, somehow crossing the vacuum of space in nothing but their personal armor to infiltrate the ship. "That's impossible," Zextai said. "No species can survive vacuum exposure long enough to—" His words were cut off by the sound of weapons fire from the corridor ahead. Plasma discharges lit up the walls, followed by the distinctive crack of human kinetic weapons. Then silence. "Security Team Alpha, report," came Commander Vorth's voice over the communicators. No response. Zextai and Draklos moved forward carefully, weapons ready. They found the security team around the next corner. 5 experienced mercenaries, all dead. The kill shots were precise, professional, and had come from multiple angles simultaneously. "They're coordinating perfectly," Draklos whispered. "No communication chatter, no confusion. Like they can read each other's minds." Zextai studied the scene with growing dread. The humans had eliminated a full security team in seconds, using crossfire techniques that required extensive training and absolute trust between team members. These weren't regular soldiers. These were the special forces that Commander Vorth had mentioned in the briefing. A new sound echoed through the corridors. Steady, rhythmic footsteps, multiple sets, moving with mechanical precision. The humans weren't trying to hide their presence anymore. All remaining security teams converge on Section D, Commander Vorth ordered. We'll overwhelm them with numbers. Zextai keyed his communicator. Sir, I recommend against direct confrontation. These are Special Forces operatives. They're trained specifically for this type of engagement. They're outnumbered 50-1, Vorth replied curtly. Numbers will prevail. But as Zextai and the other mercenaries moved through the ship's corridors, the humans demonstrated why numbers alone wouldn't be enough. They had turned the ship itself into a weapon. The first indication came when the lighting failed. Emergency illumination cast red shadows that created perfect concealment for soldiers trained in stealth operations. Then the environmental systems began fluctuating, creating air currents that would mask sound and movement. They've accessed our ship's systems, sensor operator Nixval reported over the communicators. They're manipulating our own infrastructure against us. The humans weren't just fighting on the ship. They were fighting with the ship. They had somehow interfaced with the mercenary vessel's computer systems and were using them to create tactical advantages. Doors sealed at critical moments, atmospheric processors created concealing mists, and artificial gravity fluctuated to throw off mercenary aim. How is this possible? Draklos demanded as another security team disappeared into the maze of corridors, only to fall silent moments later. Zextai was beginning to understand. They're adaptable. Their training focuses on using any available technology, not just their own. They've figured out our ship's systems in less than an hour. The realization was terrifying. Most species spent years learning to operate unfamiliar technology. The humans appeared to be capable of reverse engineering and exploiting alien systems in real time. Security Team Delta, we have visual contact, came a voice over the communicator. Engage and eliminate, Commander Vorth ordered. The sound of weapons fire erupted from somewhere below their position, followed quickly by screaming. Then silence again. Security Team Delta, report. No response. Zextai felt his respiratory spiracles constrict as the pattern repeated itself. Each time a mercenary team encountered the humans, the engagement was brief, violent, and ended with mercenary casualties. The humans were moving through the ship like ghosts, striking precisely and fading away before effective resistance could be organized. Sir, Communications Officer Kethmar's voice was tight with fear. We're receiving a transmission from inside the ship, audio only. Put it through, Commander Vorth ordered. A human voice, calm and professional, filled the communication channel. This is Master Sergeant Rodriguez, Terran Special Forces. You have 30 seconds to surrender before we take the bridge. Commander Vorth's mandibles clicked in rage. You're outnumbered and surrounded. Surrender yourself. 25 seconds, the human replied, completely ignoring the commander's outburst. All remaining security teams to the bridge immediately, Vorth ordered. Zextai joined the rush of mercenaries converging on the command center. Nearly 40 warriors crowded into the bridge area, weapons trained on every entrance. Surely the humans couldn't overcome such overwhelming numbers. 15 seconds, Master Sergeant Rodriguez announced over the communicators. Show yourselves, Commander Vorth snarled into the communication system. 5 seconds. The bridge doors were sealed and reinforced. Multiple security teams had established overlapping fields of fire. Every possible approach was covered. The humans would have to be suicidal to attack such a heavily defended position. Time's up, the human voice said. The attack came from a direction no one had anticipated. The ceiling. Human Special Forces operators dropped through access panels that hadn't existed moments before, having somehow created their own entry points using cutting tools that had sliced through reinforced hull plating. They descended into the bridge on rappelling lines, firing with precise accuracy while still in motion. The first volley eliminated half the bridge crew before anyone could react. The humans landed in perfect formation, immediately taking cover behind equipment stations and continuing their assault with devastating efficiency. Zextai fired his plasma rifle, but the human he targeted had already moved. These soldiers didn't fight like any species he had encountered. They moved constantly, using three-dimensional space in ways that conventional tactics couldn't counter. "Surrender now and you'll be treated according to galactic conventions," Master Sergeant Rodriguez called out, as his team systematically eliminated the remaining mercenaries. Commander Vorth raised his weapon toward the human sergeant, but another operator put a kinetic round through his primary shoulder joint before he could fire. The commander dropped his weapon with a cry of pain. "Medical assistance will be provided for wounded personnel," the sergeant continued, as if the brief violence had been a minor interruption. "Cooperation will be noted in your favor during legal proceedings." Within minutes, it was over. The bridge of the galaxy's most feared mercenary flagship had been captured by 12 human Special Forces operators. Zextai found himself on his knees, his weapon dismantled and scattered across the deck, staring up at soldiers who showed no signs of exhaustion despite having just fought their way through an entire ship. Master Sergeant Rodriguez was human normal in appearance, but his gear told a different story. His armor was scarred from countless engagements, his weapons showed the wear patterns of extensive use, and his movements had the unconscious precision of someone who had survived scenarios that killed other soldiers. "Captain," he said, looking directly at Zextai, "you're the senior surviving officer. What's your vessel's surrender status?" Zextai found his voice. "The ship is yours, Sergeant. But I have to ask, how did you board us? How did you cross vacuum space without support craft?" The human's expression didn't change, but something that might have been amusement flickered in his eyes. "Magnetic grapples, emergency oxygen, and practice. We train for boarding operations in hostile environments." "But the vacuum exposure—" "Deathworld conditioning," another human operator said, checking her weapon. "We can handle environmental extremes that would kill most species. Vacuum exposure for short periods is within acceptable parameters." Zextai stared at them in dawning understanding. These humans didn't just use their homeworld's hostile environment for training. They had adapted to it so thoroughly that they could operate in conditions that no other species considered survivable. "The rest of our fleet," Commander Vorth began, "has surrendered," Master Sergeant Rodriguez replied. "Admiral Chen is accepting formal capitulation from your remaining ships. Your casualties have been significant but not total. Medical teams are being dispatched to assist your wounded." Through the bridge's main view screen, Zextai could see the remainder of the mercenary fleet. 7 ships hung motionless in space, their weapons powered down and their crews presumably captured by more human Special Forces teams. "How many operatives did you use?" Zextai asked. "Classified," the sergeant replied. "But I can tell you that Special Forces teams are trained to operate with minimal support against superior numbers. That's what we do." As human medical personnel began treating wounded mercenaries with professional efficiency, Zextai reflected on the battle. The Korthak Mercenary Guild had been defeated not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through superior tactics, superior training, and soldiers who had learned to thrive in conditions that would break other species. The humans hadn't just won a military engagement. They had demonstrated why their species had earned a reputation that made even the galaxy's most dangerous warriors think twice before threatening their territory. Hours later, as Zextai sat in the ship's converted brig alongside his fellow mercenaries, he overheard a conversation between 2 human guards. "Think they'll spread the word?" one asked. "About what?" "About what happens when you threaten a Deathworlder's home." "They'll spread the word," the other replied confidently. "That's the point." Zextai realized that the entire engagement had been as much about sending a message as it had been about defending territory. The humans had allowed some mercenaries to survive specifically so they could return to the galaxy with first-hand accounts of what Earth's defenders were capable of. The message was clear. Sol System was defended by soldiers who had been forged in the crucible of a world that tried to kill them every day. They had turned that harsh training into tactical advantages that no other species could match. And now the galaxy would know why alien mercenaries trembled before Deathworlder special forces.